I did a little penalty study. This is right for Bobby Belt. The culprit is Dan Quinn. So I went back.
You know, it is interesting that over the last 2 years, when this topic has come up, we've never mentioned the name of a coordinator. We have never brought up that person's side of the ball in terms of being responsible for penalties. That just hit me. I'm like, why haven't we done that?
Right.
Yes, Mike McCarthy at the end of the day
his name's on the marquee.
His name's on the marquee, but you have an offensive and a defensive coordinator.
Right.
Why don't we bring them up?
And I didn't think of this either until I was going through every single season that I've covered for the Dallas Cowboys. I went back and looked, dating back to 2003. And outside of Wade Phillips' tenure, there's never really been a situation where there's been this bad of a stretch of penalties. So Parcells.
Wow.
I know, right? When Bill was here, their 4 years, their rankings were 24, 24, 27, and 12.
And being closer to the bottom is better.
So if you're ranked number 1, that means you're the most penalized. If you're ranked number 32, you're the least penalized. So Bill was 24, 24, 27, and 12.
Excellent.
Their records were 10-6, 6-10, and then 2 9-7.
Okay.
All right?
And he said he did not coach penalties.
He did not coach penalties.
Wow.
But he was a strong arm. Like you feared Bill. Wade Phillips, nobody feared Wade. 8th, 1st, 4th, 6th.
Wow.
Now, they were great in Wade's tenure. 13-3, 9-7, 11-5, 6-10 when Tony got hurt. Jason Garrett, 5th, 3rd, first 2 years. 13-19, 13-18, 24-21-15. So, pretty good. Mid-pack.
Mid-pack.
Mid-pack for the most part.
Yeah.
Then you get to McCarthy, 11th and 1st. So during this, and you know, the way I did this is I went to this one website.
And in Green Bay, he was...
in Green Bay, he was...
very good.
18, 25, 23, 16, 26, 25, 13, 31, 29, 1. 1 was his first year there. So I wasn't descending order. So he was very good in Green Bay. His teams were not highly penalized at all outside of that first year. So in the process of going through all these seasons, you know, you hit each year. And I noticed that Seattle was number 1 in back-to-back years. Okay. This is when they were the Legion of Boom.
Number 1, like the most penalized.
Like the most penalized in back-to-back years. So I went and looked, and it was 2013 and 2014. I said, when was Dan Quinn the DC there? And he was the DC there 2 years, 2013, 2014.
Oh.
So Dan Quinn has been a National Football League defensive coordinator 3 years. His teams have finished with the most penalties in the NFL all 3 years.
What's Dan doing?
Wow, what a find.
It was lucky. I wasn't looking for it. I found it.
What an RJ Choppy find with the research project. I knew you'd find something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, both years in Seattle, they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
All right? It just happens to coincide with the 2 years that Dan Quinn was their DC. So, again, Dan Quinn has been a defensive coordinator in the National Football League 3 years. And all 3, his teams led the National Football League in penalties.
All right.
The defense rests.
All right, very unfair follow-up. It's not very unfair, but I'm curious to know. You probably don't have the info. What were his Falcon teams? What were his Atlanta teams? And then we can totally rest the defense.
I'll do one by one.
Okay.
But they were not super high. So his first year, 2015.
You need some time to do it?
They were like 25th.
Okay.
All right. So they were not high. The next year they were mid-pack.
Okay.
In 2016, then that's the year they went to the Super Bowl. In 2017, they were again mid-pack.
Okay.
2018, the Falcons were mid-pack again. Actually, they were below that. They were near the bottom, so they were like they were on number 20.
So that's kind of messing up the study.
Well, I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know.
He didn't have any highly penalized teams in Atlanta.
He didn't, but as the head coach, it's almost like when he's a coordinator,
like more handprint on his
more
units.
handprint,
more hands on his unit.
right? Because I don't remember. I think the Falcons had another DC when he was there until the end. Remember, at the end he took over.
Okay,
If I'm not mistaken.
so when he's like directly responsible for that group,
Yeah.
highly penalized.
Highly
Interesting.
penalized. 3 years of DC, 3 years as part of the most penalized team in the NFL.
You know, you talk about the Parcells fear factor. I would like to ask this to Mike McCarthy. Was he a bigger hard ass? I would think he was more of a hard ass in Green Bay than here. My theory for it
more
is
miserable in Green Bay.
yeah, just cracked heads more.
Yeah.
My theory is right. You're younger, you're fiery, and you're trying to make your mark initially. Then you're unemployed, and you ease up a little bit as you get older, and you want to be not cracking skulls. You chill out, you mellow.
Yep.
So I wonder, this is really a Chris Woodward comparison. Woody apparently didn't have the ability to crack down in the clubhouse. He came in early and it was, hey, players coach, no rules. No rules, do your job, let's try to get better. But then when you try to, there's a saying, right? Is it better to be hard and soften up or soft and then harden up? People always debate that. Do you want to come in? It's better to crack heads and then soften. Because if you come in and they think you're a softie, you get laughed at when you try to crack down. So I just wonder, McCarthy, having this players coach reputation now with the Cowboys, when he goes in that room and yells and gets hype about penalties, I wonder if it has the same effect that he had in Green Bay when he was younger. That's something we'll have to ask McCarthy.
Good question.
Because they all praise him for being, look, there's people that make fun of their training camp practices. There's people that see highlights and clips and they text Broadus and ask him, they doing anything out there? They actually practicing hard? Are they doing anything? So that is a very veteran type approach from a player's coach. And I wonder when it comes to trying to, hey, let's clean it up now. This is unacceptable. I wonder how much fear there is in the room.
Maybe there isn't. Real quick, the Falcons coordinators are Dan Quinn, Richard Smith, Marquand Manuel,
Mike Nolan.
and Raheem Morris.
No Mike Nolan?
Mike Nolan was there before Dan. He was the DC 2012 through 2014.
Yeah.
So look, that's just, and you got to go back and I'd have to go look and see.
But no, that is a fair question. We should be asking the coordinators. We should be asking Dan Quinn next media session. What's your responsibility with the penalties?
Why
is Mike just taking all the heat?
2 games that stick out where the defensive penalties killed this team. The Raider game. How many pass interference and holding calls they get in that
Thanksgiving.
game. And the
San
playoff
Fran,
game.
15 penalties.
How many times did the defensive line get called for holding? You never see that.
What about Randy Gregory?
You never see a defensive lineman getting called for holding. And it happened, 2 or 3 times in that game? So there were quite a bit. And look, that's not Dan's fault, but it is odd that when you look at the 3 years that he has been a coordinator in the NFL, all 3 years, the team that he was on led the league in penalties.
I don't think he would mind me reading this, but I texted the big fella yesterday. He finally wrote me back, Mark Colombo.
Yeah.
I said, should we blame players or coaches more for penalties? And Mark said a bit of both. If it's happening with multiple players over multiple seasons, you have to assess how much coaches are emphasizing it, but also what are they doing to correct it? Some players are more penalty prone than others. So finding ways to tweak a technique, get creative, like using wrist cuffs for offensive linemen or DBs to help with holding. I like to think it may be the Cowboys' number one priority, but what's the plan to fix it? A big barometer of coaching discipline is the amount of pre-snap penalties a team has. Those are the unforced lack of focus plays that coincide with overall team discipline. So the former offensive line coach and offensive lineman Mark Colombo helping us out with this topic.